Hey, I'm Hallie, and we are coming on the air here with breaking news just into us. President Trump's former national security advisor, as you've just heard, just indicted by a federal grand jury. So here's the deal. We know it's 18 counts on two different offenses, transmission and retention of national defense information charges. We know investigators had been looking into whether Bolton had improperly taken those classified materials, kept them after he left the Trump White House during the president's first term. Now, Bolton's attorney has said he's handled all records appropriately. Remember, this is just coming into us in like literally the last 11 minutes. We do not have a response just yet to the indictment from Bolton's attorney. We expect that would come really any minute here. The FBI conducted searches of Bolton's home and office back in August, remember. The president was just at the White House within also the last 25 minutes or so as this news was breaking. Because remember, this grand jury indictment was just revealed over the course of the last 60 minutes. As this news was breaking, a reporter in the room asked him about this. I'm going to play you the president's response here. Listen.
John Bolton was just indicted by a grand jury in Maryland. Do you have a reaction to that?
I didn't know that. You told me for the first time, but I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes, right?
We have just gotten a statement here from the Department of Justice, from the FBI director as well. We're going to read that in a second. But just for context here, Bolton is this like friend turned foe for the White House. The president used to be his boss, right? But Bolton has been critical of his leadership since leaving the administration as national security advisor. And this is not even the first time that we've seen this perceived enemy, somebody who the president considers a political rival, indicted in just the last few weeks here. You see down at the bottom of your screen, Letitia James, James Comey, obviously both indicted. There are other people whom the president has threatened, his DOJ has threatened to indict as well. Let me bring in our team coverage here. We've got Ryan Riley, we've got Gabe Gutierrez, we've got our legal expert as well. Misty's with us too. Ryan, let me start with you because there's some questions around what is this indictment about. The FBI says, or the Department of Justice in this release that is out in the last 15 seconds, says the FBI's investigation revealed Bolton allegedly transmitted top secret information using personal online accounts and retained these documents in his house in direct violation of federal law. Ryan.
Yeah, so essentially what the indictment lays out is that he was keeping these diaries that he was sending to individuals who appear to be editors of some sort for his book. And what we got this press release from the Justice Department, which just given the timing and how quickly this happened, obviously you had some statements that were pre-written, I think, for to come out. But here's what Pam Bondi had to say, that there is one tier of justice for all Americans. Anyone who abuses a position of power and jeopardizes our national security will be held accountable. No one is above the law. And we have a statement from Kash Patel saying that the FBI's investigation revealed John Bolton allegedly transmitted top secret information by using personal accounts and retained said documents in his house in direct violation of federal law. And he said that weaponization of justice will not be tolerated, and this FBI will stop at nothing to bring to justice anyone who threatens our national security. But, in the broader context here, of course, you have now three individuals who have all were sort of enemies of Trump's who have now been charged. Although this case, I would say, stands out amongst the other two, which you have former FBI Director James Comey charged, as well as the indictment of New York Attorney General Letitia James.
And I want to just let people know I'm not looking away from you. I'm reading through the indictment as we all are here. So, Misty, I have a question for you because it names here, without specifically saying their names, individual one, individual two, others, who Bolton is exchanging these messages with. You heard Ryan talk about that diary. So somebody sends a note saying, do we get a diary today? Don't think you can do it on this trip. Diary finished, etc. Do those individuals face any legal liability here? Is it possible we could see any charges against them too, Misty?
Well, it certainly could be to the extent that they disseminated information to others. There's the possibility, but really the obligation lies with Bolton. And that's where you're going to see these types of criminal charges. And I do agree. Now we have several indictments come down the pike, but this one is a little bit different in my mind. It's a 5-year investigation. We're talking about the execution of 2 warrants to search his office and his home signed off by federal judges. So this case is a bit different than what we saw against Comey and Letitia James. Obviously, this is an indictment, so it's a probable cause standard, but certainly all of these itemized documents. I'm looking at page 20 in this chart. That is going to be the key questions here, the transmission and the retention of these documents. And in addition to that, are these documents related to national defense information? That's a key characteristic in the statute. They have to be those types of documents in order for it to be criminal conduct.
And Ryan, with your expertise also in the national security space, some of the classification here on these documents was as high as top secret about things like, according to the indictment here, intelligence on future attacks, foreign policy relations, foreign adversaries, et cetera. This is the kind of stuff that is typically super protected inside the national security community for reasons of safety and security for the individuals involved.
Yeah, and I think what prosecutors, should this case go to trial, are going to be able to point to is John Bolton himself making statements about the importance of classified information on various media appearances that he's made over the years. And that, the position that he held, he obviously knew these were the importance of keeping classified information protected. The indictment itself sort of, spells out that he knew that the importance of classified information, had to sign agreements and whatnot along those lines. So there is a history of bringing cases of this nature, and I think, to what Misty was saying, that was what makes this case a little bit different from the cases that we've seen against other of Donald Trump's political enemies, is that there seems to be a little bit more meat on the bones here, and other comparator cases that we've seen. Of course, presidential elections since the beginning of Donald Trump's rise to office have revolved around classified documents. That was something that arguably secured him his first presidency because of that investigation into Hillary Clinton. And he made a big deal of that on the campaign trail. And then, of course, we saw the investigation of Joe Biden's handling of classified information. And, of course, you saw one of the two federal cases that was brought against now President Trump when he was out of office, which also involved the use of classified information. He actually referenced that during his press conference yesterday about how they were going through his wife Melania's drawers and whatnot. So that is something that has a history of those cases being brought forward involving classified documents. Hallie.
Gabe, I'm going to get to you in just a second, but Ryan, before we do, just to make this point, and we said that Bolton's attorney has previously said he didn't mishandle these documents, that some of this stuff, that many of these documents had been approved as part of a pre-publication review for the book, right? Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, so they would have presented the final product for a classified review, and what this has to do with is sort of contemporaneous notes that he was taking at the time. So it is in this little bit of a gray area, because it seems as though he was communicating, according to the indictment, with editors along the way and keeping these diary entries along the way. So there might have been information in those diary entries that didn't make its way into the eventual book. And what these charges are about is that those two individuals who received this information were not authorized to receive that information at the time. So this is a little bit of a tricky one, and it'll have to be about what that information is and how much of that they're going to be revealing in the court process. This could be lengthy procedures before a judge. So this isn't going to be one of the speedy trial. I wouldn't anticipate this going very quickly, because these cases can get very complicated, as we saw in President Trump's own case.
And speaking of President Trump, Gabe, we heard his almost instantaneous live reaction to word of this indictment coming down. It is clear that there is no love lost between him and his now former, obviously, national security advisor.
Yes, the president calling John Bolton a bad person when he was asked about this. Moments after we received word of the indictment, said he had not seen the indictment, didn't know the case against John Bolton. But clearly the president has repeatedly railed against his former national security advisor, who in this indictment, as we're reading it, had a skiff installed in his home to view classified information in his position as national security advisor. But according to the indictment, emailed some of that classified information to these other individuals and stored it improperly, according to the indictment, inside his home. Now, it's very interesting, Hallie, that the president has been shifting his messaging, so to speak, on some of this prosecution of political enemies. For example, there's John Bolton, of course, there's James Comey. He has been taking a step back in a way and saying, oh, well, he didn't direct his Justice Department to do this. They're just bad people and they should be looked at. But there was that social media post a couple of weeks ago, shortly before the indictment of James Comey, where a senior administration official told NBC News that he had actually meant to send that private message to Attorney General Pam Bondi, urging her and the Justice Department to prosecute some of his political enemies. And it was inadvertently posted on Truth Social. So the president apparently taking a very direct approach with ordering his Justice Department to go after some of these political enemies. But when it comes to John Bolton, again, White House officials, we just reached out to them. They are deferring to the president's comments in the Oval Office a short time ago. Again, just calling Bolton a very bad person. Hal.
Misty, let me go to you here, because what is next for John Bolton? There's this question. Will there be an arrest? Will he self-surrender? How does this typically work? How might it work in this instance, and when?
In this case, he'll likely self-surrender. There'll be an initial court date. The formal charges will be read. His lawyers will make an appearance. He'll enter a plea, presumably based on the comments of his attorney, Abby Lowell, not guilty. And then it will be the next steps off to the races, motion practice, and on its way to trial in what will be absolutely a very complicated case that's been raised by the panel, especially when you're talking about the sensitive nature of these documents, and what each and every document is going to matter, whether it falls under this definition, whether or not it is something that was approved to be retained. All of that is going to be at issue, but that's a sensitive analysis that the attorneys will have to go through in order to bring this case to trial. But I would expect he'll turn himself in. We'll have an initial conference. It'll be similar to what we've seen with Letitia James Comey.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or watch live on our YouTube channel.